まるで思いの話終わり迎えた私流される道から
Welcome back, Riders! For the next installment of Pokemon Anime Version, we're going to be talking about characters from the world of what's probably my favorite manga and anime series from the last few years, Frieren. Just for a little bit of context, in this video, we're going to be talking about the hero party, like right after they defeat the Demon King and return back for their celebration at the beginning of the series. This is a series that takes place in a familiar fantasy setting, but subverts a lot of the usual fantasy tropes you're used to, and it features some of the most well-developed and well-written characters in the entire genre. And in its own magical and comforting way, I think that this series is one of the best, if not the best, representations of grief in all of media. Honestly, I could talk about the brilliance of this series and what it means to me for hours, but that's not what you're here for. You're here for Pokemon teams. So today, we're going to go over the Pokemon teams of the hero party that defeated the Demon King. I'll hedge this with the same 3 points as always. First is that this is obviously subjective. There's no right or wrong, but if you disagree with me, get in the comments, tell me I'm wrong. I'd love to fight with strangers online today. Second is that I tried to avoid repeats on the characters' teams as much as possible, except for when it's lore accurate. Last is that in talking about these teams, it's structured in a way that I'm going to start with their starter, but there's the canon fact that the hero party, after defeating the Demon King, was allowed to partner with a mythical Pokemon. So those mythical Pokemon are going to take the role of the ace. All right, it's time. Let's review the teams of the Pokemasters from the hero party. And we're going to start with the most famous trainer in all the land, Himmel, the hero trainer. Himmel's starter was a Growlithe who was instrumental in teaching him the values of being a person of noble virtue. Whether true heroes or not, Himmel and his Growlithe have been striving to prove themselves as noble companions from their childhood. Next on the heroes team is Aegislash. It's crazy because as Himmel took up the art of the sword, this Pokemon was actually drawn to him. And it's not really common that this Pokemon selects a trainer, but Himmel's natural talent with the sword may have played a part in that. Himmel's third Pokemon is a Ceruledge. And while its fiery battle prowess and knight-like appearance spoke to Himmel, he was drawn to it for a secondary reason. And that was its secondary typing, Ghost, which really spoke to his ever-present knowledge of mortality. Next on Himmel's team is a Gallade. Soon after their full party set out to fight the Demon King, Himmel caught a Ralts and trained it into a Gallade. Their mastery of courtesy and blades always made them a striking pair, but it always seemed like he wanted this Pokemon as his partner for a more curious reason that you might discover later. Fifth on his team is a Roserade, and Himmel caught this Pokemon just before fighting the Demon King. I guess there was just something about the flowers that he liked. And the mythic partner selected by the hero was of course Victini. Glorious in victory and finally at peace, Himmel selected Victini to celebrate his party's generational triumph. This Pokemon reminded him of the time his party spent together and what they accomplished well into his old age. The next trainer is the most corrupt holy man to ever step foot in the holy city, Heiter, the priest trainer. Heiter's starter was an Indeedee. While Indeedee did eventually help him with his healing, the emotion Pokemon and him had a lot in common from a young age, particularly their emotional intelligence and slight aversion to battling. Next on the priest team is Blissey. He was actually given a Happiny to raise when he began his formal training in the healing arts, as most talented priests are. And good thing that he was, because Blissey's hidden ability Healer was a massive help to the hero party. Next on his party is Drampa. This is a Pokemon the priest caught at a young age, and Heiter was always taken by Drampa's mysticism yet dopey nature. And people always told Heiter that it matched his paternal instinct. He never really knew what they meant till later in his life. The next Pokemon on the team is Spinda. And this was the first Pokemon that Heiter caught in adulthood. He said he was intrigued by the patterns, but everyone knew he just wanted a drinking buddy. The fifth Pokemon on Heiter's team is Shuckle. The corrupt priest told everyone that he needed this Pokemon to make better potions, but the truth is that the berry juice that Shuckle produces is known to be alcoholic. Fun fact, Heiter is actually regarded as the world's best cultivator of alcoholic berry juice. And upon defeating the Demon King, Heiter picked Shaman as his mythical partner. Heiter was entranced by Shaman's ability and desire to purify toxins, and realized how much he could learn about healing from this mythical being. It's funny because the priest prefers the sky form of Shaman, but the Pokemon always stays in its land form around him, much to his disappointment. And third is the hero's second oldest Pokemaster, Eisen, the warrior trainer. Eisen's first Pokemon is a Cleaver. He started with a Scyther, as most dwarves are paired with sparring partners when they're young, and when his evolved into a Cleavor, it actually helped him make a decision about what his weapon of choice was. And while Cleavors are often rough, crude, and violent, Eisen shares a lot of his calm and sometimes mischievous disposition. The next Pokemon on Eisen's team is Scrafty. Not only do these two make quite the pair, but they bonded over a lot of shared personality traits. Even though both of them can sometimes come off as rude, one of their biggest priorities is taking great care of their loved ones. Next on Eisen's team is Conkeldurr. The Conkeldurr line's ancient status and importance to humans' knowledge of materials and techniques for buildings means that they've been working hand in hand with dwarves for thousands of years. Fourth on his team is Togedemaru. This pair shares their steel core and the fact that they're both incredibly sturdy, but I mean, just look at them. They're both so small and lovable. Fifth on Eisen's team is Dragonite. And while Dragonite of course matches Eisen's power levels, the reason that he caught it is because Dragonite are said to live for hundreds of years. And it's known dwarven wisdom to catch at least one Pokemon that can match your lifespan. And after defeating the Demon King, Eisen chose Marshadow. And the warrior chose this mythical Pokemon not just because he's an incredibly strong fighting type, but because he saw him as a companion, and he really loved this cute little guy's helmet. And lastly is everyone's favorite elven Pokemaster, Frieren, the Mage Trainer. Frieren's first Pokemon is a Meowstic. Her starter was a male Esper, which actually isn't very typical for elves, but Frieren always had an emotional, or lack thereof, connection with Esper. Next on the Mage Trainer's team is Glaceon. In her travels, Frieren was gifted an Eevee from an old friend, and although she thought it best to evolve it into an Espeon, she was secretly pleased when it stumbled upon an Ice Stone and evolved into Glaceon, especially since she loves its calm and icy demeanor. Third on her team is a Gardevoir. Gardevoirs are said to be the perfect companion for any mage and are especially typical for elves. And Frieren's Gardevoir, who lived well beyond her life expectancy, was one of Frieren's closest friends. Her next Pokemon is Porygon Z. She found the Porygon while researching futuristic ruins with her master. And while it seemed like a trivial companion at the time, the dubious disc needed to evolve it from Porygon 2 into Porygon Z contained one of the most dangerous spells Frieren had ever seen. Fifth on Frieren's team was a Claydol. Similarly, Frieren found a Baltoy while exploring ancient ruins with her master. While she finds Claydol's appearance off-putting, this ancient and psychic creature has been a boon to her magic, and it also provides an odd comfort reminding her of her old master. After defeating the Demon King, Frieren chose a Hoopa as her mystical partner. Frieren was drawn to Hoopa because of their ability Magician and their sheer output of mana, but secretly she hoped Hoopa could help her on her quest to reach Alreal. So that wraps up the Hero Party's Pokemon teams, but you see that there's a lot of time left in this video. What gives? Well, I'm giving you a bonus. So let's take a look at the Pokemon on the team of Frieren's master, Flamme, the Great Mage Trainer. First on the Great Mage Trainer's team is Roserade. Flamme's starter, or Roselia, was given to her by one of her parents, the same day that she learned how to create a field of flowers. This Roserade was her lifelong partner and constantly reminded her of her love for magic. And during Frieren's time with her and Roserade always shared a special bond. The next Pokemon on her team was a Delphox. This Pokemon was Flamme's truest companion, both in battle and in day-to-day life. This pair shared more than their appearance and personality. They shared a love for magic, which helped propel each other forward in their craft. It's said that people use the shape of Delphox's burn marks for divination, and that's a practice that was actually started by Flamme. The next Pokemon on Flamme's team was Espeon. A friend of hers bred Eevees, and like any good mage, Espeon's psychic powers were always an interest to Flamme. And these two were kindred spirits of sorts, as Espeon's alien-like appearance always matched how Flamme felt in her own world. Next on her team was a Turtonator. Flamme found this Pokemon while in the midst of a harsh battle, and this is the Pokemon that actually taught her how to harness her mana for her explosion spells that she was known for. Fifth on the Great Mage's team was Alakazam. Abra was a good friend of Flamme's for a long time, actually given to her by her tutor Sari, but she never really knew how important this Pokemon was going to be. Not only did it teach her how to use Reflect as a Kadabra, which was the basis for her defensive magic, but when she took on Frieren as a student, it evolved to Alakazam and was instrumental in the young elf's instruction. And even though she never defeated the Demon King, one of her strongest partners was a Mew. As the founder of mankind's magic, Flamme is the mother of all the mages we encounter later in the season. All of them have a piece of her DNA. While Mew wasn't her Pokemon in the traditional sense, it's not like she ever caught it in a Master Ball, these two were partners, both in their protection of humanity and their shared vision of the assurance of Magic's future. In fact, the myth is that Sari realized her student's potential when Mew appeared in front of Flamme for the first time in a millennia. Alright, that wraps up the Pokemon teams from the Hero Party +1 from, it's probably my favorite series right now. I hope you all liked this video because I had a ton of fun making it. And for the next video on Frieren, we're going to take a leap forward in time and look at the Pokemon on the teams of the characters on Frieren's current party. Let me know what you thought about these teams, and again, if you disagree, get in the comments. If only there were a Pokemon that had a move that could melt somebody's clothes off, am I right? Oh, cut that. Cut that, that's bad.